Carla Hinton reporting for the Oklahoman and NewsOK.com. I'm here today with Lynn Roof and her daughter Chandler. Chandler is a 7th grader at Weatherford Middle School, and they are about to go back to school shopping. And so we're here today to talk about fashion. One of the things that I have noted in my research for this story about fashion is that many young girls and their parents, sometimes they get their ideas for fashion from magazines. I've heard that maybe some TV shows like the Gossip Girls and the Hills, sometimes those drive today's fashion. So we're here today to kind of pick your brain for a minute about how you go about picking appropriate fashionable clothes. Well, I wanted to ask you, Lynn, what do you all do when it comes to shopping? Do you talk beforehand about what you're wanting? Are there any particular rules that you go by, or what's your thought?
Well, before we go to the mall, she usually tells me what she needs.
Okay.
I ask, if she needs jeans or shirts or what she needs in particular, and we usually have a couple of favorite stores that we'll go to, and I like to look for sales. First of all,
okay,
and so she picks out clothes, and she usually asks my opinion when she tries them on. So
that's great. Hey, for you. Yeah. Now, Lynn is also a teacher, and that's why I think this is really interesting that we have her in the studio today, because you can look at this from two different angles, especially when we're talking about school fashions. You're a teacher, but you're also a parent. And so you were teasing and saying that Chandler can't get away with too much because you're in the school system,
right?
And you could find out anything. But how do you all deal with just the school dress code? Have you ever had issues about that, or are you all usually within those guidelines?
We usually are within those guidelines. We see each other as we walk out the door. We go to school together, and so. Unless she has something stuck in her backpack that we don't know about, which but we would find out, which is kind of good for us.
Right.
We have all the eyes watching.
Okay.
But she's usually a rule follower.
Okay.
So we don't have to. She's not a rebel.
Great. Okay.
So that makes it easy on us.
Okay. And one of the things that you mentioned, and I talked to some other parents about this, you mentioned too that you think pop culture sometimes affects what young people want to wear. Sometimes that can be good and sometimes not so good. Can you talk about that?
Well, yes. Some of the things that the kids like to watch on TV, I feel, are not always great examples with fashion and also with just the attitudes that the kids have toward authority or, their elders.
Right.
So I do feel like that drives attitudes and fashion.
Okay.
For the good and sometimes not so good.
Okay. All right. Well, how about you, Chandler? I know that one of the things you told me when I interviewed you, you said that there have been occasions when there were some girls at school who maybe did not follow the dress code, and I was going to ask you what actually happened to them.
Well, they would get sent to the principal's office, and they would usually call their parents and be sent home to change and come back later.
Okay. Something that I wanted to ask you all, do you think that is it possible to be both appropriate and fashionable? How do you deal with that?
I believe so. Chandler has some clothes that might have some small straps, and she can still wear those, but she has to put on a jacket or some kind of a sweater, some kind of covering, and that way she's wearing what she wants to, yet still staying within the parameters of the dress code.
Okay. So those are the kind of compromises that you can make to be both fashionable and appropriate.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
yes.
Good. Well, I was trying to think. One of the things that you mentioned as well, that your husband sometimes he doesn't necessarily agree, or it's not that he doesn't agree. He's just a typical dad, and he sees his daughter growing up, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you deal with that? Do you ever talk to him about that? Or?
I do some. I usually don't get anywhere with him. We usually listen, and then sometimes she does, kind of what she had planned to do in the first place, and he backs off a little bit.
Okay.
But other times, she will have to change.
Right. Okay. Well, that's important what you said about listening. I talked to a family counselor in Edmond, and one of the things that she mentioned is that clothing is a way that many teens express their identity, and they begin to express their independence. And so parents really do need to let them, if at all possible, choose their own clothing. But it's okay to listen and maybe negotiate. Negotiate.
That's kind of like this morning when I went upstairs to her room to see what she was going to wear for the interview. This is what she had on, and that's probably not what I would have picked. I would have picked something probably a little nicer, a little dressier.
Right.
And then I thought, well, that's all about clothing choices, and this is what she wore.
That's right. And that is an Abercrombie & Fitch T-shirt,
yes.
right? Okay. And your mom said that you've kind of moved from Limited to Abercrombie & Fitch and maybe Hollister. So that you're right, Mom. It does sound like that's where her choices are going. So
yes.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming in today and participating and just letting us interview you. And they are our cover models for the youth section on July 28th. So, this is Carla Hinton reporting for the Oklahoman and NewsOK.com.